I like to start off this story by saying that you're always better safe than sorry. I listen to horror stories all the time, but I never thought that I would be sharing my own. For privacy reasons, I will be changing the names in my story. My name is Jessica, and I'm 15. I would like to think that I'm a very cautious person. I live in Ireland in a big suburban neighborhood. I usually like to go on walks almost every day. It's nice to go outside every once in a while during this pandemic. It started off like any typical day. I got up at around 8 a.m., went to get some coffee, did some workouts before school. Around this time, a snowstorm was approaching my country, so it was very cold outside, and it got dark around 5 p.m. After I got done with an exhausting day of school, I went down to go watch some TV in my living room. Shortly after, I got bored and decided to go on a walk. It was snowing outside, and it looked really nice for a walk. When I left my house, I didn't bring my dog with me. He can be quite annoying to walk at times, and I just wanted to enjoy myself. As I was walking down a long stretch of sidewalk, it was about 4:30 p.m. at this point, and it was starting to get dark. I'm the type of person who's very perceptive and also paranoid. I think it's good to be a little paranoid sometimes, as it could possibly save you in certain situations. I look up to see this man walking past me. I've seen this man around my village before, and he's always giving me the creeps. I always get this weird vibe whenever he's around. Other times when I've walked past him, he stares daggers at me with an unsettling grin on his face. I don't want to be too judgmental, but I think that he may have something wrong with him. So as he walks past me, I keep my head down to avoid eye contact, but I can see from the corner of my eye that he is staring at me. I keep walking, but I suddenly had an urge to turn around. As I did, I saw him just looking at me, which made me feel extremely uncomfortable. To describe this man, he is about 6 feet tall, looks to be in his mid-40s. His hair was in a tight man bun, and he always seemed to be wearing the same clothes, jeans and a flannel shirt with dirty shoes. My heart started beating fast, so I turned back around and continued walking. Over the next 10 minutes, I could feel him watching me, which meant that he was most likely following me as well. I turned around again to confirm my worst fears. There he was, still staring me down like some kind of creepy statue at a Halloween store. We made eye contact for about 5 seconds before I felt my fight or flight instinct kick in. My mind scrambled, trying to figure out what to do. He was only a few meters behind me and closing in. I came to a junction and waited for the light to give me the signal to cross the road. There weren't many street lights on this road, which made me feel even more uncomfortable. While I was waiting there, I heard the man walking closer to me. I was hoping that he would just pass by me, but that wasn't the case. "Hey there." I turned around to face him and just gave him an awkward smile without saying a word. As I crossed the road, he kept close behind me. Hey there," he said again. I offered a quick response. "Hi." I spoke in a strong voice without sounding too eager to talk to him. I kept on my way, but he followed me and continued the conversation. "I'm trying to get rid of phones in my house. I'm trying to sell them off. Would you be interested in buying one?" As soon as he said that, I knew that I was in danger. This man wasn't going to leave me alone, and I knew he was lying. I may be young, but I'm not that stupid. So I just said, "No thank you, you have a nice day," and I kept walking. He continued to follow closely behind. I was now thinking about how unfortunate it was that my phone was broken, and therefore I couldn't contact anyone for help. So I began to internally panic. I turned a corner, and I noticed that there were no people or cars. It was then that I decided to make a break for it. I didn't look back, I just counted down in my head. 3, 2, 1, run. I soon realized that I had made the correct decision when I heard the pounding of footsteps close behind me. I knew I shouldn't have, but I looked behind me one last time as I ran. The lighting wasn't the best, but I could clearly see that he was holding a large kitchen knife in one hand. I was so scared that my heart was practically beating out of my chest. I felt sick, but I had to think fast. The man was gaining on me. We were running through my village at this point, and I could see some bystanders in the distance. That's when the unthinkable happened. I felt a cold object strike my back. After a few more steps, I could feel my blood make its way down my spine. That's not a figure of speech either. This lunatic had stabbed me. I staggered a bit, but I kept running even though I was badly injured and bleeding. Fortunately for me, there was a small police station just across the road from my neighborhood. Knowing that this was a life or death situation, I sped towards the police outpost. Once I got to the entryway, I looked back to see the man running in the opposite direction. I ran inside, completely hysterical. 2 police officers immediately came to my aid. One of them called an ambulance while the other applied pressure to my wound. I frantically told them about the man and tried to explain what happened. The ambulance arrived and took me to the hospital. I was in shock and so overwhelmed by the whole situation. None of it felt real. Fortunately, the stab wound wasn't that deep, and I have since made a full recovery. I gave a detailed description of the man and mentioned that I had seen him around before. He must have fled somewhere far away, because to my knowledge, they never caught him. That was the very last time I ever took a walk by myself.
My apartment was robbed once and then broken into a couple of months later, and that's not even the crazy or spooky part. I had just moved in, and I got very, very sick, and I actually had to go stay with my parents while getting treatment at the hospital. No one had even been to my new place or knew the address. It was full of unpacked boxes that I was too ill to move in properly. Whoever broke in, they left the TV, they left the jar of cash on the dresser, and they only took my diaries. Multiple diaries, and I always buy the same kind, and they date back for years and years. Each of them were packed into different boxes, too. Someone had riffled through my stuff, found those diaries, and only took them. They'd even left my DIY recipe books, which were the same style as those diaries, so they had to have checked each individual one. This apartment was on the 3rd floor. There was no sign of a break-in, but there were small handles on the outside of the pillars of the porch that went all the way to the ground. Thinking maybe, perhaps they climbed, but I don't know. The second occurrence when I knew something weird was happening, and that someone had been in my apartment, I returned home one night to find the light outside of my door was off. In the moment, I didn't really think much of it, except that I needed to call and get it replaced. I unlocked and opened up my door and tried to turn on the light, nothing. I thought maybe the power had gone out, but then I looked and saw my microwave still had the correct time on it. Something about that spooked me, and I went over and called the on-call agent for our apartment complex. He came over, and I waited outside. He came out a few minutes later and told me to immediately call the police. Turns out nothing had been taken, but every single light bulb in my apartment had been unscrewed just enough so that the lights wouldn't turn on. The cops came and checked it out, found nothing suspicious, but told me to stay somewhere else for the night. The next day, after telling my sister what happened, her and a boyfriend drove from 3 hours away and installed deadbolts. It was against the complex policy, but the management was just as creeped out as I was. Thankfully, nothing else creepy happened in the 2 years that I lived there.
I would like to remain anonymous for reasons that will become obvious. This happened about 5 years ago when I was 16. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I was an asshole back then. Me and my friends were a bunch of idiots who robbed, sold dope, and partied like rock stars. The area that we were in shall remain nameless, but I will say it was in Canada. One day, I went to this guy's house. Let's just say he was a friend of a friend. He wanted to buy some electronics off me that I had recently come into possession of. We'll call this guy Mike. Now, Mike was this fat white dude, I would say in his late 30s. I knew all about Mike because of his reputation. He was constantly in and out of prisons for various reasons, mostly drug-related and assault charges. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Why the hell would I be associating with a dangerous guy like this? The answer is about what you would expect. I was just a young, stupid kid. I went into his house with a friend because I needed help loading the stuff inside, and I also needed to show him that everything was working properly. Mike asked, "How much?" I gave him a price. I can't recall the exact amount I was asking for, but he obviously didn't like what he heard. "I'm not paying that much, kid. $400 is the best you're gonna do." We argued back and forth for a little while, until my friend chimed in. "Hey, fat ass, quit in us around and give us our money. Or you can go yourself." Mike then grabbed a chrome handgun out of the cushion of his couch and pointed it at us. He cocked the hammer back and shouted, "Okay then, get the out of my house, you little bastards." We left and took the merchandise with us, and he drove off laughing about the whole thing. Inside, I was losing my cool because I had just had a gun in my face. After we hid the merchandise, I headed home. Later that night, I went to a house party with my girlfriend and spent some time drinking and smoking weed until my girlfriend wanted me to take her home. We were both pretty intoxicated when we started walking back to her place. Along the way, we had to stop so she could take her shoes off. That's when I heard from behind me, surprise. Then a loud bang. I grabbed my girlfriend and ducked down behind a car as more shots rang out. That's when I realized that my girlfriend had been shot in the chest. She was still alive, but was going into shock. I put my hand over her wound and kept telling her that it was going to be all right. The shooter made his way around the car, and that's when I saw that it was Mike. There was a second gunman with a sawed-off shotgun with a bandana around his face directly behind him. Mike ripped my girlfriend away from me and pointed the gun at my face. I begged and pleaded with him. "Mike, dude, she's got nothing to do with this. Let her go." "Damn shame, kid. She's cute." He aimed his gun at her head, and anger completely overtook me. I charged at him, screaming. But before I could do anything, I was hit in the back of the head by the man with the shotgun, and Mike turned his gun on me and said, "Your turn." By stroke of luck, a few of my friends came out of nowhere and began shooting at them. I stayed down, and when the shooting stopped, they were gone. The next few hours are a blur to me. I vaguely remember talking to the cops and somebody telling my girlfriend's family what happened. I can only imagine how crushing it must have been for them. I was eventually released, and as soon as I got back home, I took a nosedive straight into a bottle of whiskey until I passed out. A few days later, the police caught up with Mike and his asshole friend. After that whole ordeal, it made me start re-evaluating my life. I'm a much different person today, and it's a good thing too, because most of the people I knew back then are either dead or in prison.